All right, so first, I want thank you for being here.
Yeah.
The 56 SAG Awards,
Yeah.
it was really the Life Achievement Award. I wanted to say, when I saw you there going up, I want you to know, your speech was so awesome that I stood up and I almost started to cry.
Oh,
It was really, it was a great speech.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I was watching last night, I wanted to watch it again. People stood up and they were holding their hearts when they were watching you. How did you feel when you were...
Well, I was very, I didn't expect that kind of reaction or reception. It was great,
One of the things I was struck with when you were receiving the award, first of all, when I first heard about years ago the SAG Life Achievement Award, I called it the Lifetime Achievement Award. It's not that, because you're really in the middle of your achievements.
Right.
Well, no, but you are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important to say that. But I thought it was really when Leo went up there and introduced you, the fact that you worked together when he was a young boy.
Yeah, well, I've known Leo since he was 15.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't know but when we had a reading of this boy's life, and Leo was reading another part, and I said to Art Linson, the producer, a dear friend of mine, said, that kid's pretty good. What's it? Just pointing it out. I wasn't like, I didn't know where we were. It was a reading. It was looser. I don't think the parts were set in a way. So anyway.
You do a lot of, when you say the reading, because you do a lot of readings. I was watching some interviews that you had done. You do that for a lot of films before you go to work on them?
I like to do them just because it lifts it off the page
Right.
a little bit, and you get a sense, and some other people come to watch, friends or professional people I work with, my agent, whatever, come to see what they get, and then what we all feel. And sometimes having those readings, you can see that it needs work, so let's come back in 6 months or whatever. Other times, you say, yeah, let's do it. There's just a lot of, there's no downside. And actually, the one who put me onto that was Pacino. Al would do that. Let's have a reading about something. Years ago, he told me. I said, yeah, it's a good idea to do that.
Well, look at what you discovered. You discovered,
yeah,
like in a way, Leo, right? From all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then when you go, so you remember seeing him there and thinking I knew him when he was a little boy. So when I lived here, because I worked in a management company when he first came out, and so, everybody loved him. He was the it kid at that time, right?
Yeah.
So you saw him, you recognized
I didn't even know. I just
right.
the kid at the
You could just feel his energy. He's got a
Yeah.
connection. So what was really interesting for me when he was introducing you and saying that you've really, the impact you've had on so many people's lives, and then you stood up saying, we're going to be doing a film together, and I'm thinking, how is that from the boy to the man?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting. It's like crazy in some ways,
It's wild. What is the project you're going to be working on?
Killers of the Flower Moon with Scorsese and Leo and myself, and I'm not sure who else is in it yet.
How many films have you done with Scorsese?
9. This would be the 10th.
I think you are really a Renaissance man in so many ways, so there's a lot to talk about. But just for a moment, I want to talk about your relationships, because I am struck by your deep friendships. I mean, Joe, you've worked with over 8 times, Harvey Keitel.
Yes.
And Al Pacino, Scorsese. I mean, these are like...
They're right for the project. You're comfortable with them, but most importantly that they're right. Nobody's better for it. I wish that Harvey would have had more to do in The Irishman, but I mean, he just was so great in the simple stuff he did.
He's so good.
We're lucky at least that he was in it.
Right. I think it was a great team. Harvey, actually, I also knew from years ago when I was in college.
Oh, okay.
And so I just...
What college did you go to?
I went to Sarah Lawrence. So.
I did a play at Sarah Lawrence.
Did you really?
40 years ago with Will Leach.
Oh my God.
John Braswell.
John Braswell was my teacher. Will had already left.
Will was a co-director with Brian De Palma on The Wedding Party.
Right.
That I did when I was 19.
Right.
So, and then they were doing a play up at Sarah Lawrence when it was a girls' school, right?
Right. Well, that was even before. So that was quite a while ago because it was co-ed by the time I got there.
So, I did La Ronde, and So
my first film I ever did was, and I didn't remember because we didn't work together, it was Jackknife. When I just got out of Sarah Lawrence. But you weren't in my scene. I did it with Ed Harris.
Oh, Jackknife.
Yeah.
Oh, you were in. Oh, but Brian didn't direct it. It was.
No.
Yes. Okay.
David Jones.
David Jones. Yeah.
Right?
He passed away.
It's tough business, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's interesting. So yeah, so from Sarah Lawrence and coming here, and that's when I had known Leo. But I just want to come back before we finish with the awards. Because you said something, first of all, one of the reasons I was so moved when you spoke, you talked about unionism in this country, and the idea that unions are just, being vilified, truly. And for you to be able to speak so strongly, I just want you to know that I work with the AFL-CIO, and I work with FIA, which is the International Union for Actors all over the world, and people called me from all over when you stood up, because it resonated for them.
Right.
And can you talk, have you always had a connection? I don't know what the connection for you for unions are. Was your father wasn't in a union, your mother?
No, it's just doing the right thing. There's right and wrong. You don't have to know everything about things. You know what's right. You try and do the right thing, and you know what the wrong thing is. It's that simple.
In our society with unions, 30 years ago, everybody was connected, right? And that whole decline of what's taking place, I think young people long for it now more than ever, but they work differently.
Yes, I guess it was with Reagan who started I remember the air controller strike.
Right.
We broke that. That was kind of...
That was the beginning of all of it, right? We fight so hard for laws to protect. We talk about, for instance, let's talk about the Irishman for a little bit.
Okay.
Because I actually want to talk to you about working with Netflix, about working with Ted, who I love.
Yes.
And in The Irishman, the idea of you doing this film at this time was really profoundly important. And because of, I think it tells a history.
Yeah.
It tells a great history of our country, right?
Yes, of course.
Buffalino, my husband grew up with the Buffalinos.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a lot of
Upstate,
connections there.
in
Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, In The Irishman, tell me about what drew you to the story. Did you help to present this story? Where did it come to you?
Marty and I were working on a movie. We were trying to do stuff, coming up with a project, and we finally came up with one. It was about an aging hitman, retired hitman from out in California, the West Coast, and what he's going through. But it was more of a genre piece. It wasn't really. It didn't have. It was just a different style of film that had no specifics that I...
No point of view.
Yeah, you couldn't connect. In some ways, it was what it was, but nothing wrong with it. Just and so then when Marty was starting to show me, talk about how he was going to do it or the style or whatever, and he said started to show me movies like a Jean Gabin film, an old black and white film. And I said, well, I've got to read this book called I Heard You Paint Houses that Eric Roth told me about a few years earlier when it came out. And he said, you got to read this. And so then I said, let me read it for research. And I read it, and as soon as I finished it, I said, Marty, you got to read this book because it's so specific, and it's a world I see it's real. Right. I know it is. So a certain thing from this guy's point of view, the situations, the characters, and it hangs on these big events and characters like Hoffa and what happened to him and so on. And there's this dispute about what did happen to him. And Marty has said, look, it's a story that we're telling. It's not the truth.
Right. It's based on
the book. We don't know. I feel it's very plausible to hear the actual truth by all the experts and all the big authorities on the mob and unions and Hoffa and so on. So show us, if you've got a better answer. And we're not saying it's the answer, but it's very plausible. And to add to that, I would say that whatever did happen to him probably is very close, or could be very close to how it was, because it just makes sense to me.
We never hear that side of it. It was such the big phrase, whatever happened to Hoffa, that was growing up. I always heard whatever happened to Hoffa. That was a really great closure and I think it does feel truthful. It's interesting Netflix did it.
Yeah.
We're really in a different time when you think about, it was the three major studios that ran our entire industry.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have, Tribeca Film Festival, which we'll talk about, and I know you have, Wildflower, we'll talk about that, but talk to me a little bit about your connection with Netflix. Why Netflix?
Well, Netflix came along. They were the ones that all of a sudden we found ourselves doing the project with, and were great. Yes, there were certain things that in the streaming part of it and all, but as far as I was concerned and Marty was concerned, they're doing the movie, giving us the money to do it in the way that we want to do it.
That you want to do it, right.
So, I mean, and things change. You have no control over the way things go, and we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we see it going in that direction. More films on home screens, though. Theaters I love, that's what I was raised on, but at the same time, there are certain things you have no control over how they will morph into something. You'd say, this is it, so you have to ride with it.
Kids are like watching on their,
Yeah.
When people told me that the phone would be away I said, nobody's going to want to watch on a little screen like that. And now, I mean, I don't know about your kids, but literally they watch.
One of my kids is, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so it's amazing the way technology, I think that Ted is really a visionary. I really like him.
Well, to me, he's a guy who really likes movies, and he made a speech with all the Netflix films we had before the Academy Awards, and I said he was great. He said such nice things, but really specific things about everybody involved in every film that Netflix had that was was nominated, but really specific, nice things. This is a guy who really likes movies. Yeah, he's smart. I was very impressed.
I'm going to tell you something, a special thing about him, because I feel the same way. He did a movie, and I'm sorry that I can't remember the name, but it was about a young boy from India who comes out to do sports, and anyway, the film was up for an Oscar, and it was he for a year with this young boy who he brought out raw from India, was traveling all over the world with him, doing, like when you're going to do screenings, whatever, and they'd have these lavish meals. The young boy actually, one of the times, had said, could he have a bowl of rice? This was because it was just so much for him. He just wanted something simple to eat.
Yeah.
Ted really grew to really care for this boy after a year of traveling with him. And he talked to his wife. He said, I can't send him back after the film was finished to be, when he's had this exposure and then take it all away from him.
Yeah.
He adopted him.
Wow.
And he said, I want to be able to go and put him through school. I'll take care of everything for his education. Wow. And that's the kind of guy. I had to add,
yeah.
He's like a real...
Yeah, he's a mensch.
He's a true mensch.
Yeah.
He really is. He has got such a good heart. And the idea that he just wasn't doing to be exploitive, like he was doing, when you talk about doing the right thing, he's that guy. I think that. So I'm excited. I was excited that you had a good experience with Netflix.
Yeah, we couldn't have been treated better, and as I say, by a person who really cares about film.
It's interesting also, Netflix actually, I think, changed the game. It was a game changer for us in the industry, right? So when we talk about the three studios, networks that existed, the major studios, and then Netflix came out, created this thing called streaming, right? And you mentioned that, things are changing. The fact is, I think we have to change with the times. We have to be open to it, right?
You have to be.
Well, in Tribeca, the projects that you're showing actually reflect your willingness and ability to say times are changing.
Yes, I mean, the group does it. Jane Rosenthal and everyone else do all it and all of this, and I'm not in it on a day-to-day, but I'm there when needed. And I find it's hard for me to see even all the movies. I'm lucky if I can see a quarter of them.
Right. But you don't only do films. You do. I couldn't believe you also do video games and.
Yes, we have other things that I'm not even aware of now that we're doing. We'll have a meeting soon about what the whole rundown will be. But yeah, it's.
Jane is interesting. Yeah. She's really smart.
I know.
Yeah. Well, clearly you know. I am very impressed with what you've created with her, but that you brought a woman in. And can you talk about when you first? Well, because that's not always the way, right? I mean, we kind of it's the business has been a lot of the old boys club.
Yeah.
You're not that.
No. I have men working for me too, but I trust women many times more than I would trust men in general, I would say.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
I think that they would handle situations politically better, more sensibly, and can be tough when they need to be. So the idea of a woman not being tough is just not something that I agree with. And the idea of her not being tough, or the perception of women being not, is just not so, especially in a situation like being president or vice president or any of that.
We're raised by women. We are our moms, right?
Yeah,
Hello.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
How did you meet Jane?
I guess about 35 years ago or something. I was around 40, 41. I started thinking of creating something. I didn't know what. I saw this building. It was kind of nothing was being used. Yeah, and I said I'd like to create this home for us. So I started looking for. Simultaneously, I was looking for a person to run a company that I would start. So I interviewed about 20 people, and Jane among them a few times, and finally over a year or so I decided to have her do it, and told her my dream of this place and so on, and
Was she open to it right when you?
She was a studio person, type person that but she wanted some kind of change, and she wanted to do this, and I think I would say to her, like, you know, do you want to be in that system, which is fine, where you don't know where you really are, or you're in this thing where you have some visibility and you
can have some self-determination.
Yeah, exactly. You start and you're part of something from the start.
And it sounds like you support her in really being a voice here. I think it's great. It's really. I want to talk a little bit about 9/11. The idea that you're founder of the memorial for 9/11, one of the founders. I was in LA when it happened. It was devastating. Where were you?
I was Midtown. I was about to fly to LA, and when that happened, at a noon flight, I came down here, and by then they had barricades up on Canal Street and so on, and I lived like a block from here, and I got through and went in, and I watched the buildings were both had been hit by that point, and then I then couldn't believe it. I had big windows looking south. I see the South Tower start to come down. I had to look to my TV in the corner to confirm what I saw with my own eyes. And then a little later, the second one was, you know, how could you even...
I was traumatized and I wasn't here. I had friends here. But I don't know how, tell me how you...
Nothing seemed important then. I was trying to do The Good Shepherd.
You were directing at the time?
No, I wasn't directing, and I was getting it ready, but it just seemed not important at that point. It just seemed, I didn't know if it would ever be important after that. And then slowly, after a few years, things start, you know, people, it's like you're waking up, and you gotta, it's like waking from a nightmare, and you gotta get up, and you gotta get out of bed, and you gotta walk, and you gotta take care of yourself, and you just gotta move. Right. That's how I felt. So.
When I read the Tribeca Film Festival originated out of wanting to raise New York up, or did you do that before 9/11?
We had talked about doing a festival somehow, but it wasn't really, not that it wasn't serious, it just wasn't high on the list of doing something. And then after that, Jane, I think she said, well, maybe resurrected the idea of doing it to bring the neighborhood back. And also, we were doing these dinners in different restaurants in Chinatown, Little Italy, to just with buses loads of people that we'd get to go and sort of drum up business for.
Oh, great.
Because it was kind of, nothing was happening, it was dead. And we got it up and running in a couple of months, 3-4 months. That's how it started. 3 or 4 months you had it. I think it's 3 or 4 months. Right. I could be wrong, a month or two more, but I think it was somehow pretty quick.
I just have to ask you to go back to this, because you had buses coming in, you were bringing people all
buses, we'd stop out here, I'd get on the bus, everybody on, and we'd go to a restaurant, and as I say, on Mulberry Street or Chinatown, down around, we just go to different places.
That's awesome. Within 3 or 4 or 5, whatever months, you have the Tribeca Film Festival from that time, and now where it's at, because it's not just some small thing out there. It is really a prestigious festival.
Yeah, we didn't know what would happen. So, I mean, the idea of having something that's part of the fabric of New York, the tradition, culture, the culture, is a great thing to be part of and to have contributed.
If you think about a life and you say, have I made a difference? Clearly you've made a difference. So that's great. I mean, it's important. So now you have, congratulations on Wildflower, is that right? Wildflower?
Yes. My son is working on it with some other people and Jane is working on it, where it's got a ways to go, and it's hopefully we'll get there.
We'll talk about, I mean, that is a really major thing for New York. To be able, I mean, I know we have Astoria Studios,
yes,
and there's a lot, but New York is like a real focal hub to our industry.
Yeah, well, of course it is. There's always studio space needed, so that's how this evolved.
You've directed a little bit.
Yeah, the 2 films, Bronx Tale and The Good Shepherd.
Do you like directing?
I do, yeah. I like it. It takes a lot more work of a certain, more of your time.
Right.
And I don't mind doing that as long as it's something that I say, well, I'm prepared to give this time.
You're right, because you have the pre-production, post-production, and then you have to be responsible for everybody's work.
You're there from the beginning to the end, so it's a 2-year period or something, give or take.
That's
6
a long
months.
time.
Yeah.
Have you ever chosen not to do something and then later thought, shoot, I wish I had?
I've done okay, pretty
You think?
well. Yeah. I mean, I'm.
But I mean, is there anything you wish you had said yes to that you
No,
said
no.
no to?
There was a couple of things that I wasn't. I was taking a little long to decide, and so the director said, "I'm going to move on," and I said, "Okay," and they turned out to be great. But so I'm doing okay. I had no.
I want to know, when you work, you were talking about, like you go through a process, and let's say when you were working with Martin, you're looking at the script and you're saying, oh, something's there, I'm not. Do you do any of the writing at all?
In doing scenes, sometimes there's improv, there's ad lib, always room for that. You know what the structure is, you know what what's been written.
Right.
And you go off that, depending. When we have sessions to talk about a scene or the whole script or part of the script, how about this? Think of what we could do, or I'll say to Marty, it reminds me of something that I went through once, and I'll tell him, I say, yeah, that this happened, so we could maybe, that anchors it in that kind of reality or truth. That was an actual thing that happened. What of that can we use that's real, that can be applicable to this situation that we're going to do now? Do
you memorize, once the script's done, exactly the lines the way they are?
I like to know the lines. I like to know them, especially certain writers. Certain writers have a specific rhythm, and if they're good writers, usually good writers, you only find specific rhythms in good writing that I can think of.
Right.
So all the more reason to know that well, and then you can go off it.
Right.
But to
you
know
must
it,
know it.
you must know it. I feel that's important.
Talk to me about this. This is my own personal thing. Memorizing as you're getting older. I mean, for me, that's.
I'm okay. I'm average, so I really want to know it, and I
Right,
drill it to make sure, so that I don't have to think about it.
Right. It just comes out.
Yeah, because if you're thinking about what your line is, that's an interesting thing that can be usable in a scene, if it's applies to the scene, the character. But if it's going to get in the way, and you're going to stumble through lines, then you're stumbling through lines, and that's what's being seen. You've got to know and have the lines come out as you think them, and in order to do that, you can't think about it. They're there. They're coming out the way I'm speaking now. Sometimes the lines are not
really what the scene is. Yeah. Right. The lines are saying one thing, and if you're you can't even be in the scene because you're so worried about that. And so
So it's just got to be, as I say, the way I'm speaking now. It's coming out.
I'm going to come back a little bit to Netflix, because one of the things when you worked on The Irishman was the CGI.
Yeah.
Which is a really big thing for us right now in terms of technology in our industry.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what you saw when you saw that, what you thought about that.
It was all, I used to joke all the time that'll, extend my career another 30 years.
Everybody says it can change the way we work. So the laws don't really pertain to this right now.
No, you're right.
So you gave permission for them to make you younger.
Yeah.
But we, just now in New York, which it didn't pass, but we have to do it state by state because it's so hard to do it federally. But the idea of post-mortem image rights, so when you pass away, in California, I can fight that saying you have to talk to my estate to get permission.
Yes, yeah.
But you don't have that law here in New York.
I have something that with a lawyer, one of my lawyers, that we talked about that. It's interesting you bring that up. You're right.
It's not only what's in our contracts, we have to change the laws.
Yes, yeah.
We have to somehow bring it to the minds of our legislators in what's going on, because actually our rights as individuals to be able to choose, that's all we have is ourselves.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
It was interesting, like with Star Wars, when we saw Carrie Fisher had passed away, they were able to recreate through technology because they had samples of her voice and her image. She's still in the movie.
Wow.
Her estate, because she's so big, they knew they had to go to the estate because there would be nobody would, there would be too big of a fight. But there's no protections. There's no mandate for that. So they could have actually, what's going on in our business right now, for people who are background, they're starting to take their images, librarying them, and then they want to be able to go and make them do other things.
Oh, that's interesting.
They won't be paid those days.
No.
Right? It's like your image is stolen from you. Your voice, they can take your voice, and they're able to take a couple of words and create a whole script from your voice. And then when I was at CES, they showed the technology. It's new, 4 years old. Honest to God, I'm going to show you later a video where it's smart learning the computers have. They can take a few pieces of a human being, create another human being out of it with gestures as teachers, doctors, and this stuff is rivetingly real. It's not like...
But it's a new creation?
It's a new creation.
Based off something they took. So where does that fit in all this?
I don't know what that means down the road. I think it's more important for us to be able to make sure that the things that they take from us, that we're able to own them.
Course,
I mean, that's the one place that we're going to have to try to find.
That's
because you can't change that path, right?
No.
But we can go and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
I want to ask you, because I also see it being, like you said, it can make your career, maybe extend it. That is a positive, because I think that's true. But let's say with Raging Bull, and this was something that somebody brought up, but I think it's true. You know how you had to gain weight. How much weight did you have to gain for that?
60 pounds.
That's what I did in my pregnancy. That's a lot of weight. But anyway, so 60 pounds. Now, imagine you didn't have to do that. They can do that with CGI and make it look real. But would that affect your performance?
No, it would have been different. The reason I gained it is because I knew gaining that weight would affect my performance, obviously, everything, which it did. Which is interesting with Irishman, I took for granted sometimes physical things, because I felt, I moved pretty well, and so, but then I noticed in some articles about, they weren't even critiques, there was an article about aging and stuff we're talking about, and they noticed my age, walking and doing certain things, and I said, geez, I should have been. And we had a movement coach there, tapping us on the shoulder when we were not being age appropriate. And
really?
Say, well, you're 39 now, so sit up or whatever. Or if I'm going down the stairs, and I'm kind of a little more tentative for my real age, then he says, well, if you go down, really you're like 39. This is how you should do it. And he kind of bound down the stairs. I say, you're right.
I can't.
so I did it. I did do one. It was okay, and I always joked that Marty cut it out. But in all seriousness, he was right. He's right. I wish I had been a little more proactive about that part of it, because I took that for granted, thinking, well, they got the young, it's okay. But anyway,
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So you see it now afterwards, but people commented on that?
There were a couple of things written. It was just stuff
Right.
about they noticed the age of a person my age who was playing the younger Frank Sheeran, and so
Right.
I said, well, they have a point. I guess I thought that I was okay. I look at it, but actually, when you think about it, I could have. What would I have done? I would have made sure in those things I would have been much more
Right.
focused and aware of the difference, or have
Right.
my movement coach move first, do it a couple of, I'd watch
Right.
them, and even if it hurt my leg walking a little bit, I don't have aches or pains
Right,
like
right,
that,
right.
but I would make myself try and get up to the way that they were doing it,
Right.
because it's subtle, but there is a difference.
Right, so you almost think that the technology is going to make it easier, but you're actually
Well, you forget,
challenged.
that's the
Right,
look. Now you
right.
still need all the other stuff to do.
Have you seen the virtual reality, the glasses you put them on? And
Yes, you put glasses on and you could be anywhere. There was a thing that a few weeks ago here actually. So I put these on, and you're 30 stories up, walking on a plank.
I did that.
Did you? I couldn't jump off the plank.
I did it. My daughter first got it. They had a
Yeah.
cheap one that was,
Yeah.
because when they started making them, I was standing outside our house and I was walking. I was so intrigued, and I literally bumped into a tree because you can't see anything. But
That's the problem. You got to be safe in those things.
But it really is interesting, right?
Yeah.
That flight, or what did you call it?
Fight or
Fight or flight, right.
Fight or flight. No, I knew the room I was in. It was like being in here. When I put that thing on, I couldn't step over.
That's wild,
That's
right?
weird, yeah.
Even though you know that is so funny. So when I watched your interview with Al Pacino, right? You were sitting and talking about The Irishman. This is what I was struck with, was your friendship. And I don't know if you want to talk. You mentioned him a little bit when we were at the SAG Awards. I had talked to you about The Irishman a little bit, and you said, "What did you think about Al?" I said, so I thought, yeah, this is a man who loves his friend. I mean, really loves your friends. Talk a little bit about Al.
Well, Al and I have known each other about 50 years, give or take a year or two. And we don't hang out. We do hang out together, but rarely. But we do get together and we talk and we kind of, we compare notes, if you will, because we found ourselves in the same situation, and so that sort of made us closer because of that too. And get advice from him. I'd give him advice what I thought, certain things over the years. Yeah, that's it.
When you talk about hanging out, so you just did a reunion, right, with the Godfather cast?
Yes.
So I have to ask you this because we just did that,
Yeah.
and for me, it was a really interesting experience. What was because you haven't hung out with everybody, clearly, from The Godfather, have you? Since
No,
those
only
days?
Francis from time to time, and Al, and who else?
So how was it when everybody came together? Do you remember,
For the festival, I tried to get everybody
Yeah.
together, and I called Francis, and he was a little reluctant to do it, and I said, again, come on, let's do it. This is it. Who's gonna? And he was great about it, and he said, okay, we'll do it. So,
Why
I
was he
forget what
reluctant?
else I said to him. So,
Why was he reluctant?
I don't know. He just it's whatever he had a reason. I forget. And my thing was, it's for good cause. To the festival, it's nice. You get everybody together. It's a good thing. We'll try and make it happen. Nobody, it's all up. It's all up. It's no downside.
Right.
That's all.
I don't know if you had an experience when you walked in and everybody was together after all those years. What was
Yeah.
that like?
Interesting, but I mean, nobody. I think more for Al and Jimmy Kahn and for Bobby Duvall and Francis, because they were in the first one. It was Alec Baldwin did a thing. He was on a talk show and he did an imitation of all of us, and it was very funny.
He was good. I know. I saw it.
We were all mumbling to each other, and he was like, I thought it was great.
He's funny.
Yeah, he is.
He's funny. I'm going to see him this week.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I saw you.
Yeah. I've told him. I thought it's great. It was great.
He's really, and I love him doing Saturday Night Live.
Yeah,
His stuff is just too good, man. It is really good. No, it's interesting. I think for when we got together after all these years for my cast, it was emotional for me. So that's why I was asking.
Well, it was a television thing. Well, everybody's working together all the time,
exactly.
whereas that's a movie and everybody's together. And people always say about movies and everybody goes away, and you might or might not see them ever unless you're working on another project. It's not like doing what you did, I think, because people are there every day, all the time.
You're right. It's a family, and we're there. It's like 10 years.
Yeah. Well,
that's
of course,
like
that's
marriage,
a
right?
totally different thing. Yeah, than a movie.
Have you taken a role? So this was interesting. And I know you're established now, so maybe your freedoms are different. But taking a role that you think, God, I'm not sure. I like the idea of this role, but this role is dark. This role, I don't want this role to define me.
I've not come across that kind of thing. There was a project that was given to me about me actually, a character meeting me and trying to meet me and da-da-da-da. And I thought it was interesting. And I met the director and writer of it and so on, and I still might pursue it and just have a reading of it.
Right.
I
love that.
Because it's going into of me actually saying certain things, and I look and I say, well, I wouldn't say that, but I would say this, so maybe there's something here. It was interesting. It was worth exploring. And I wanted to go over the script and the scenes just to talk to the director to say, well, just to get more close to what it would be with me, I would say this, so how about we do this? I said, let's get that a little more in focus, and then have the reading, and then see, maybe it's an more interesting idea.
That it looked right.
Yeah, but I can't tell till
you hear it.
Till we do it, till we get further and people see it. And even with Analyze This, Billy Crystal had the idea of doing this character, this whole thing. And I thought, well, Billy was telling me he wasn't sure what I'd be interested in. And I said, no, the way I think I remember it, he said. And so I said, well, why don't we have a reading and just see? And I thought, it's worth trying,
What about Dirty Grandpa? I watched that.
That was another type of thing I did.
I want you to know, I got to tell you. So I love Taxi. I love, of course, Raging Bull. I love Godfather. And I never watched, I have to say. And so then I thought, I have to watch it someday to see you. I laughed.
Really?
Hysterically laughed. Honest to God. I don't know. Are you embarrassed about doing that movie? Is that?
It was beyond embarrassment. I just did it, And
I thought you were fun.
I thought, let me have some fun. Let me just do it and see.
I thought
I liked the director. He was a smart guy. So I took my chances on it.
And I think that's great. I mean, because you've done really, that's amazing to be able to be diverse and to not just do the stuff that's, Oscar winning, but sometimes just have a good time.
I agree. That's what I did. And some of it was okay. Others, I met nice people. Some things I took for granted, which I really shouldn't. I should have worked harder on because they were not as easy as I thought they would be. So I learned something about that.
Isn't that amazing? It's like it doesn't really stop, right? The learning part of it.
No.
When we think we know, and then we realize, good for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So would you next time you'll approach then the work different? Is there going to be another Fockers meet the?
No, I don't know if we'll ever do that. Maybe, who knows? But that one not so much. But Dirty Grandpa, there was certain things that I would have worked on more. Thinking part of it was having fun doing it and not worrying about it. Just don't get hung up on stuff, but at the same time you have to know certain things. There's no way around it. You have to know how to do certain things, and you have to practice those and rehearse those over and over and over until you get it right. When you rehearse outside of, because I've been on projects where some people don't like to rehearse, which is really tough, right? There's a lot of things where I don't rehearse. We just sit, we have a meeting about the script, the scenes, we talk it over, we come up, we change stuff, and you don't need to rehearse. It's better to do it, right? Be in the moment, on the day. Other stuff you need to rehearse. What role have you not played that you think, this is something I'd really? I'm working on something with David O. Russell And I don't usually like to do this, but we're working on it, and I don't know when and if we will actually do
Right.
it, but it is being worked on. It's on Rockefeller. So it's a different from what you've seen me do, and something that I feel like something different.
David's very interesting because I
Yeah.
met David. We actually
Yeah.
honored David for something a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and I see him periodically. He's very interesting. So
Yeah, he is.
Because working with him, it's got to be different than working.
No, he's a wonderful, wonderful director, and I always love working with him. He's so imaginative, and just who he is, how he directs. It's all like,
I want to say a childlike energy,
Yeah.
right? Like, and he's like yes and excited, and he connects, and he's.
yeah.
That's great. I want to talk a little bit about. So I saw the documentary on your father, and my daughter, I said, is an artist as well. I sent her pictures of your father's work because I wanted her to be able to see it. And this is your father's work here.
Yes.
If you could talk about the documentary and why you did it, and
Well, I wanted to do it because I kept the studio. I still have the studio pretty much the way it was left, because I wanted my younger kids to know who their grandfather was, and my grandkids and my great-grandkids to know who their grandfather was, great-grandfather was, because he was a real artist. It wasn't,
Beautiful.
he wasn't a dilettante, he was real. And I asked him here at the restaurant, which has been here just about a little more than 30 years, if he wanted to put, and there are 3 big paintings in there that he helped place and so on. And I was worried about him being particular about them, because he used to say, well, you got to be careful. You give people paintings or a drawing, they stick it in their closet. You know? So he was very cynical about that. And I even asked him to do the menus, and I thought he's going to never agree to do this. And he actually did. And the menus we've kept, to this day. There's no reason to change them.
Right.
That's part of the tradition of thing. And the paintings, he used to come. They tell me he'd come and have some friends come and sit here, and so he enjoyed it.
yeah,
The whole thing. I was, again, not because he was very particular about that stuff, where his paintings would go, who would have them, how sincere they were about wanting them. And
right. I loved his stuff. I mean, his color usage is really, it's interesting because right now we're seeing mainly the oranges and stuff, but he's beautiful, the colors that he worked with. Really loved paint. You can feel, and watching him doing the work was just, it was interesting. And then talking about how, during the time when Andy Warhol and everything, the transitional time, and how that was just, he had a real strong.
Yeah, what he did was different, and then the whole art scene changed.
Like the art scene, like our industry, we have to change with it, or we never get to be a part of it. I have to say, this was really great to be able to be with you. Really meaningful. I think you're a very interesting man.
Thank you.
And no, thank you.